think there are so many issues here. I mean, I agree with you, the unpopularity, deservedly. But remember, this is a government that bizarrely is elected not to be popular. Forgive the paradox. We have a democratic politics in which democratic politics is supposed to be rather disgraceful. This is why Starmer constantly attacks populism. You know, the last speech, when you think about it, it's an extraordinary thing for an elected leader to attack half his people. We are seeing, do you see what I mean? It's a body divided against itself, but also it's the internal contradictions of this government, which I think are most important. It recognises it can only survive by growth. But equally, it is committed to doing everything it can to stop growth. There's also another thing which we haven't talked about, the extraordinary business of Rachel Reeves. I've been astonished political commentators haven't looked at her more carefully. Why is there that business of faking her career up? Why the constant insistence that she is, you know, an economist and a serious thinker? It is because Labour thought through Rachel Reeves that they'd come up with a means of reconciling the contradictions, right? They want, on the one hand, growth. On the other hand, because of the fact that they are the representatives of the public sector, they want to increase public sector wages, they want to increase regulation because there are a load of lawyers, they want to increase burdens on the employer by improving so-called workers' rights and whatever. What they wanted, huge net zero. What Rachel Reeves claimed to have done was to invent a new economic model. It was in the Mace lecture, which she gave last year in 2023, and it supposedly was a new method of managing the economy, which was called modern supply-side economics. It turned out, like everything else, Stephen, it will not surprise you to hear, to be stolen. Like everything else that she's ever done, it was plagiarised. It was plagiarised from Janet Yellen, who had the same job as Secretary of the Treasury in America. And in fact, it was simply the policies that the Biden government had pursued. It's old-fashioned Keynesian reflation, in which you throw a lot of money at national infrastructure, you throw a lot of money at the wages of civil servants and so on. You throw a lot of money at net zero. And America, of course, could do that because it could borrow large amounts of money. That's also, by the way, why there is the acute inflation under the Biden government. But of course, the moment you're elected in Britain, you come up with one brutal fact. You can't borrow any more money because we're bust. There was a brilliant analysis by Jason Cowley, a journalist on the left, of Reeves's Mace lecture, in which he said it was Bidenomics without the bucks. And the trouble is, it was sold to the city. Our city is now so underqualified, so unintelligent, that it bought this rubbish. If you remember, the CBI and whatever, all lined up like good little boys with their begging bowls out for the subsidy awaiting them from this new government, thinking there was going to be an economic miracle. It was elected on a lie. And the problem is that this is what will wreck it, Stephen. Its policies are mutually contradictory. They're contradictory politically, they're deeply unpopular at the time that obviously it requires re-election, they are contradictory between domestic and foreign policy, you've got to have a growing economy to maintain a serious military, they are contradictory because they are supporting aggressive, militarised and masculinized patriotism in the Ukraine, and they're suppressing it in Britain, and they are contradictory because they're economically contradictory. It cannot grow the economy with the existing policies that it's pursuing. On the other hand, it's bound by the leftish electorate, it's bound, in fact, to a large extent, by the number of MPs that it's got, because the fact that it had a landslide, this very odd, unloved landslide, it now has an awful lot of leftish MPs in Parliament. It will be very, very difficult to persuade them to go along with the cuts in welfare, with the aggressive limitation of immigration, with a genuine advancement of patriotism, with cutting back on the importance of international law, all of these things which have to be done, it will find uniquely difficult to do. I'm just hoping that the effect of this is that it will blow apart the whole rotten structure that I've been talking about. This is not government of the people, by the people, for the people. Starmer represents government of the blob, by the blob, for the blob. And when it fails, it will be the blob that failed, not Britain. But the thing that I fear is that it might actually bring down Britain with the blob.
Keir Starmer doesn't lead a government. He presides over a mess of contradictions dressed up as policy. And the most disturbing part, he was elected not on a wave of enthusiasm, but through sheer public exhaustion. This is a government not meant to be popular. It's a paradox by design. Starmer represents the kind of democracy where attacking half your own country is considered courageous, and where scorning populism, which is just another word for people, earns applause from the elite. What kind of elected leader sneers at the electorate and still clings to legitimacy? One who doesn't govern for the public, but for the blob, the unelected bureaucratic class, the overpaid consultants, the army of lawyers and academics who reproduce policy for each other, not for you. This isn't just bad leadership, it's an economic suicide note. The Starmer government claims it wants growth while actively suffocating it. More public sector spending, more regulation, more restrictions, more so-called worker protections that burden employers into stagnation. And the crown jewel of this delusion, Rachel Reeves, a politician whose resume is more fiction than fact, sold as some visionary economist. Her much-hyped modern supply-side economics was paraded as a bold new model. Except it wasn't hers. It was plagiarized, lifted straight from Janet Yellen and Biden's economic script. And even that would be forgivable if it worked. But it doesn't. You can't run Bidenomics in a country that's flat broke. The US can borrow endlessly. Britain can't. We're maxed out, and Starmer's answer is to fake it with economic theater. Jason Cowley, a left-wing journalist no less, called it perfectly. Bidenomics without the bucks, but the financial sector swallowed the lie whole. Corporate leaders, the CBI, they all lined up, hands outstretched, waiting for subsidies from a fantasy government that promised miracles without math. It was economic fiction sold to a city too dumb or too desperate to see through it. Starmer's labor wasn't elected on a mandate, it was elected on a mirage. And let's not forget the contradictions that bleed across every area of policy. They champion military masculinity in Ukraine, then demonize patriotism at home. They claim to support national security while doing nothing to grow the economy that funds it. They campaign for re-election while pushing wildly unpopular measures. And thanks to their freak landslide, an unloved accidental landslide, they now have a parliamentary majority stuffed with far-left MPs who will block every tough decision that must be made. Welfare reform? Impossible. Immigration control? Off limits? A revival of national pride? Politically suicidal? The blob doesn't allow it. And Starmer doesn't lead it. He submits to it. What we're witnessing isn't a government at all. It's an administrative cult, a regime built by, for, and within the blob. There is no accountability, no ideological spine, just performance politics masquerading as policy. And when it all collapses, it won't just be Starmer that falls. It might be the country. This is not government of the people, by the people, or for the people. This is government of the blob, by the blob, and for the blob. And unless it is dismantled, Britain will fall with it.